Welcome to another episode of Daddy Confessions. Tonight, I have two gentlemen here who I've been spending a lot of time with virtually over the past, year. I joined another podcast that I do, and these gentlemen are part of it. It's the Millionaire Man Cave, and I have two gentlemen from the Millionaire Man Cave here tonight. They are here to talk about their journey in fatherhood. And I want to let them introduce themselves tonight. Mike, go ahead, start off, introduce yourself, sir.
Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Mike, and that's all I gotta say. No, I'm just playing. I'm glad to be a part of the show, first and foremost. I am a father, been a father for 19 years, college educated. My wife's college educated, married with 3 kids. The oldest is 19, middle son is 17, the oldest is a son. And then my youngest is my daughter. She's about to be 11 on Saturday.
All right. Thank you, Mike, for being here. Appreciate it, brother. And next, I'm going to have Donnell. Donnell, introduce yourself to the people, sir.
Hello, everyone. Likewise, Mike, thankful for being on the show. Donnell Holmes, as you can see. I am a father of 3, 2 biological, 1 bonus. Married, college educated. I'll just leave it at that.
There you go, man. Much appreciated. I appreciate you guys for being here. I spent a lot of time, virtually with these guys on the Millionaire Man Cave. That's a plug for the Millionaire Man Cave. The 4th member of our crew, Tyran, who's been on the podcast several times, was a veteran here on Daddy Confessions, couldn't make it this evening, but Donnell and Mike are here to chat a little bit about their experiences as fathers. And it comes up from time to time a little bit on the Millionaire Man Cave, but honestly, that's not what the Millionaire Man Cave is about, right? But so here we are, Daddy Confessions, slightly more filtered than what we are on Millionaire Man Cave. So if you get a moment, check out Millionaire Man Cave on re-tv.net. I got it right, guys?
Yep, that's it.
Check us out there. That's the Millionaire Man Cave. You'll get to hear, me be a little bit more unfiltered. There's a little different kind of conversation. Mike, Ty, Donnell, all of us on there. Great show. We do it every week on Tuesday nights. You can always catch it, in reruns. But on YouTube, exactly. Thank you. But in any case, tonight, what we are going to talk about is something that has been kind of rolling around in my head a little bit recently. I've been thinking, I work, as my listeners know, I work in education. I work in a school. And I've wondered, and I have, obviously my 2 boys, I've been wondering a lot about drugs and our kids. So specifically, how we handle conversations around drugs and our kids. Have our kids been approached about drugs? All those kind of things have been rolling around in my head. Now, I got little boys. I got a kindergartner and a 3rd grader, so they're not really being approached in that way right now. I don't think. I haven't heard anything, but I did want to talk to Mike and Donnell about their experiences thus far with their kids, and how that's been going. So, Mike, I know you mentioned that you've been a parent for 19 years. Donnell, how old is your oldest?
My oldest is 17.
17. So you guys been doing this for a while, right? So so you guys are veterans in this right now.
A little bit.
You've seen some things, you've heard some things, you've experienced some things with your kids. And so I guess my first question to you is, before we talk about the kids, do you remember the first time that somebody approached you about drugs when you were a kid?
That's a great question. It would have been high school, but I'm not sure. So somewhere within that 9th through probably 11th grade.
Okay. And do you remember what it was? What the drug was?
Crack.
It was crack.
Yeah, and it wasn't for me to smoke; it was for me to sell.
Oh man. Okay. So they're trying to get you. They're trying to get you to sell. Okay. They want
So
to try
of
and get you
course
hooked.
I didn't go through with it, did not do that. But that was my first personal introduction to drugs.
Wow. Wow. Okay. 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 And Don, what about you, man? Donnell, what about you?
Uh, so I would probably say my first, and it probably, I would probably say like most, running with drugs was of course weed back then.
Mhm.
But I too have been not, I wasn't like introduced or, forced to, try to sell you know, or be a user, but, crack was in the mix too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
we
it
all.
was back in the 80s
That's
and
right.
90s or
That's right. I
early
was about to
90s.
say we all 80s, 90s, but you know what I'm saying, 80s, 70s babies, you know what I'm saying? We was born on that time period in the Washington, DC area. So we know interestingly enough, yeah, that's an important point to make. I love to make that point. How all of us are from the DC area. We all from the DMV. And so we've had those kind of somewhat similar experiences in that way. And so growing up in the 70s and the 80s, like being born in that time period and growing up in the 80s and the 90s, like yeah, we definitely experienced it, right? We experienced being around, people who was on crack. Like we went from like having real relaxed neighborhood experiences where everybody was like engaged in the neighborhood environment to worrying about your house getting broken into, people stealing your stuff to go buy crack. Right?
Yeah.
And I remember, I'll never forget that somebody broke into our house, our apartment, and stole our penny. We had a whole big penny jug in our house, and it was like one of those big water bottles full of pennies. I don't
Yeah.
even know how they must have had crackhead strength, okay, to get that junk out of the house, because it was full of pennies. They stole the whole penny jug out of the house. We had just put all our
Dang.
change in there. You know what I'm saying? So,
Well, to me that says it was somebody you knew and knew it was there.
they knew it was there. They
Right.
had been in the house before, right? So yeah, I mean, and clearly nobody in the neighborhood saw nothing. I don't know how you ain't see a thing of pennies leave the house, but you know, but so I hear you. So like we grew up in that time, we experienced that as 70s, 80s, babies growing up in the 80s and the 90s. And it was a tough time. You know what I'm saying? I had never thought, and nobody ever approached me about selling crack. I remember, I think for me, it was people thought that I was too much of a square to be engaged in that, so nobody ever approached me about that. But and for me, it wasn't until I went to until high school when I got approached about drugs at all. And it was I guess it depends on what you consider to be a drug. Right nowadays, you know what I'm saying? They say weed's not a drug, right? Like we are beyond weed being a drug, but at the time it was, right? So that was y'all kind of, trying to remember that first experience. I know it's not easy. That was a long time ago. We ain't young men no more, But do you remember the first time, if at all, that you tried drugs? And before we get to that, what constitutes a drug to you all?
I mean, anything that would, impair your decision making, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess just like alcohol, but alcohol is, and
Yeah.
it has to be illegal.
Right. Okay.
Same here. Like my first thought was illegal drugs. So as weed becomes more uh, you know, over the counter, not over the counter, but for sale legally by
Legalized.
states. Yeah, legalized. Thank you. I don't. I consider it the same as alcohol. So if you consider it a drug, you can, but if not, that's fine too.
Cool. So in terms of that, do you remember the first time, if at all, that you tried a drug yourself? Now you don't have to out yourself. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to talk about it. I just figured I'd ask. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Was it in childhood? Was it, I mean, not, like, middle school, elementary school? Clearly it sounded like more high school, college possible was more likely for you guys. Like, was that, or
Yeah.
even beyond? Was it after that?
College. Definitely college.
Okay.
My first time in college.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Mike and say college, because on the strength of, I was a student athlete,
Okay.
and I kind of associated that as kind of like I'm gonna get in trouble if I get caught, you know what I'm saying? And I would never be able to play sports ever again, or something crazy like that.
Okay. So because of that, you kind of stayed away from it as a student athlete.
Correct.
Okay.
And I didn't want it to affect my stamina, or, you know what I'm saying? Just
Right.
physical ability, if you will.
Right. I hear you. That makes sense. I mean, that's the way a lot of people, look at it, is that, like, they don't get into drugs because they're involved in other things that are really important to them, right? And so, or they have so many things going on. I know a lot of kids were engaged and their parents put them in so many different things, they never had a chance to, like, be around people who were doing drugs, because they was, in dance, they were in gymnastics, they were in taekwondo or whatever, like basketball, football, so, like, they were, the people who were around them had less interest in that kind of thing, right?
Right.
And so, in terms of the conversations that you have had with your, have you had conversations with your kids about drug use?
I had conversations with my two oldest. I have not with my daughter yet.
Okay.
My two oldest, when they were in around that middle school age, I don't think we had any conversations with them before that, but it was probably around middle school age. My wife could correct me if she were here, but we just kind of, like you were saying earlier, hit them with the, have you ever been approached? What it is, and just kind of that awareness, putting that awareness out there that, okay, we see you, we know that you know about drugs, from school and, learning and TV and all that. But, it's that awareness that we think that it is not good. And, if you do come across it, I mean, I don't even remember what we said, to be honest with you. I know I didn't say try it.
It's like, go ahead, try it. See what happened.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
That is not what we're saying. We're
6
not
years
saying
ago.
try. Yeah, we're not saying. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so we had that conversation around that time.
Okay. Donnell, what about you?
Oh man, so I feel like I bring like a different dynamic to the situation. So, as just like Mike said, I think so. My two boys are oldest. One biological and one bonus, right? As both know or have learned, drugs are bad just by watching TV, movies, family, talk or whatever. You have one son, because I won't call nobody out. You have one son who has totally no interest in drugs. You know what I mean? Like, he is fully aware that, drugs are bad, right? Whereas there's a curiosity in the other, meaning like, he goes to school around kids who, probably smoke weed or whatever. And so, as he's never, that I know of, has had weed before, he has pretended like, he's, rolling tissue or whatever, and trying to smoke weed. or trying to smoke, right?
So he's seen people do it. Yeah,
He's seen people do it, but
clearly.
he's exposed to that way more so than the other. Two different schools.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that I mean, that
yeah. So I
exposure.
just say, just because you have that talk, that doesn't eliminate the curiosity.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's
true.
that's an interesting point. I mean, again, I always preface these things with, and y'all don't realize this, but honestly, y'all are helping me out because my kids coming down the pipeline with these things, right? Like I got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, so one day they're gonna have these experiences, and I wonder if there's some way to handle that kind of conversation where you are then saying to them, hey, I know you are interested in this, or you've seen people do this. Let's talk about what this may mean to your young body, your young mind, right? Like, I know, it seems like you're invincible right now. Like, it seems like, you can do anything in the world and everything will be all right. But what do we, let's talk about what some of the possibilities are should you decide to do this now. Have you guys had that kind of conversation with your kids, or?
So yeah, definitely in my household, that conversation was more reactive versus being proactive. I mean, I feel like it's not like a situation where he's addicted,
right?
But I can honestly say, like, yeah, I remember doing something stupid when I was a kid, too. So
right. Yeah,
I definitely. Oh, go ahead.
But no, go ahead.
I definitely try to give my kids my experiences on a soft level. I don't really give them everything, of course, and y'all have to excuse that. Oh, but yeah, I don't give them everything, but I do like to give them some instances of how dumb I was at times, and how I've learned and from it and made better choices.
So let me ask you this, because I think that's an interesting point, right? Like, are we doing the right thing by not giving the full experiences that we've had to our kids? Like, you know what I'm saying? And I ask that question because I wonder if it is those moments of vulnerability that somehow change the dynamic for our kids in terms of understanding, okay, well, we're not just speaking from it, from the perspective of, we don't want you to do it. We don't want you to do it because this is what we've done and this is what we've experienced from it.
So to me, definitely yes. I think how I was raised, definitely plays a role in how I teach, my kids. I was just going to say, in comparison to, I'm sure that there's a lot of parents out there who probably will do drugs or smoke weed, along with their kids. They smoke it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I definitely think that, sharing some of our experiences and how we learn from it kind of definitely shapes, how they move forward,
Yeah, I think it builds a certain trust level, because you're being transparent. Like I said, I don't think it's a good idea because they're not your friends. I don't think that it's a good idea to share everything. But at the same time, some calculated things that you want to admit to and, talk about, and won't be afraid if they bring it up later. I think that it's good to share things like that sometimes.
Yeah, I won't be like, I rode the white horse. Like, I did the LSD.
Ride the white horse. Wow. Yeah.
That song was about me. Like, I'm still in love with Mary Jane, right? Like,
Hey, look, while you messing around, I bet there's some parents that have gone that route though.
Yeah. You're right. And it's, and there's something to be said about that level of transparency. And I think for some people it works out very well. But I also think you're right, Mike. I agree with you about like, being strategic about it, like really having that conversation in a very meaningful way without necessarily like, you don't have to relive every moment of every situation that you experience, when you was in college or whatever. Like they don't need to hear all of that, right? But at the same time, it's important for them to know that I may have made some mistakes. I don't want you to make these mistakes, right? Or I may have had these experiences and I don't think that they went the way that I had hoped they would. So, I'm telling you this in hopes that you will make a better decision than what I made, kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a way to go with that kind of conversation. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to it, but I think that's a direction that parents can take with that conversation. Now, I'm trying to, figure out a way to like get to this topic, this section of it, because I just found out today that my goddaughter in middle school is having situations with people who are smoking, vaping, doing pills. Like, what I'm saying? When we were growing up, like pills wasn't really a thing. Like, and some of the drugs that people are doing are prescription now, right? Like they are taking prescription drugs that are not meant for them. So we are seeing it as early as middle school. What is that? That's like 11, 12 years old.
Yeah.
About
12.
It's crazy. And so for me, not having any any medical background, but still fully understanding that your brain is still forming, I guess the thing that I always think about is like how do we approach the conversation with kids about not using drugs and messing their brains up? Like their brains ain't even fully formed yet. You in middle school. Like popping a pill seems real off the wall for that age range. And how do they get access to this stuff? And I guess, if they doing stuff that's they medicine, or they Ritalin, or they still have Ritalin. Is Ritalin still a thing? Like,
yep,
what I'm saying? Like people still doing, they doing those prescription drugs. Like, how do you approach that conversation? Like they essentially abusing prescription drugs. Like, what does that conversation look like?
I mean, that's a new school conversation, because like you said, that's one of the biggest actually for that crowd, for that middle school age and elementary school, late elementary school age, because they have access to their parents, and other people's prescriptions, and that's a big age group that abuse prescription drugs that aren't prescribed to them. So
I was just gonna say, it sounds like it's a situation where someone is getting prescribed drugs, don't use them, but found a way to make money off of them. I'm not saying that they are drug dealers. They may know someone who is willing to distribute them in the street. Yeah, I don't I really don't know how to approach it. I think that, I think that, it might be cases where however a person may be feeling in that moment, someone may say, this may help you take the edge off. And it may sound like a good idea at the time. I don't know that these people are getting addicted to these drugs, but I because to me, like back in our day, you know what I'm saying, and not 20, 30 years ago, like I don't, it was like the hard drugs that people actually got addicted to,
Right.
Whereas people are popping pills in the club, you know what I'm saying, and they, it's just a different time, and and honestly, like I really don't know how to approach that, because it's like if you get caught with it, you can easily say, well, it's for my prescription.
Yeah. 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 It's like,
Yeah.
but it's not in the bottle, it's in a baggie. You know what I'm saying? Or you just got a pill floating around in your pocket, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I hear what you're saying, and that is an interesting kind of idea, and it actually goes with this next point of like my concern around access, like the access that our young kids, and not even just, I mean, that our kids have to drug. I mean, we are in a time, like literally, where you can order things through the mail. And I ain't talking about on the dark web, you know what I'm saying? I'm talking about, and CBD is a very, it's a great thing. People are using it for important things. They're getting a lot out of it. It's very useful, but being able to even order things like CBD through the mail, kids have access to that kind of stuff. They get
I was just gonna say too, on the news, they was talking about some of these like stores was selling, infused gummies, and it's sold like candy.
Wow.
You know what I mean? To like kids.
Yeah, I heard that.
I mean,
I've heard that
candy.
recently.
It is like candy, right? Like that's the crazy thing.
If it's
right?
infused, it's illegal.
Right. Technically. Yeah. And
that part, yeah.
That's the crazy thing.
But that goes to the whole point of access.
Yeah. And I look at the kids at my school, and I haven't seen anybody specifically like using drugs or whatever. I don't think the kids in my school are like using them at a higher rate of anybody else. But I'm like, yo, the days of kids showing up to school smelling like weed, or like being, like Pookie in New Jack City, like when he came in there, he like dancing around, and like when you knew he was high. Like that's not where kids are now. That's not the kind of drugs that they are experimenting with, right? Donnell, you said kids are talking about like taking the edge off, right? And I'm like, dang, like little kids need to, or young, even teenagers need to take the edge off. The edge off of what? Like, and if that's the case, then that some of that lethargic. I can say it sometimes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mike. That lethargic behavior that they show in school is some of that due in part to drug use. Like,
you never know. It could be.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder about those kind of things, and it's not. I mean, I don't have a good answer for it, but
well, you have to also remember too, like even in the 80s and 90s, there was a such thing called a functioning addict. You know what I mean? Who didn't act like Pookie, if you will.
Right.
But to your point, I don't know. We don't know what kids are going through or thinking about at home. You know what I mean? It could be from, coming out the closet. It could be, what's after high school. I mean, it could be many things. I know personally with my oldest, as I try to drive, steer the car, going to school after you graduate from high school, come to find out the way he feels like he really doesn't want to go to college, but he feels like he has to go to college to get a good job.
Right.
And, for that situation, or for his situation, he feels the pressure from, me and his mom. I don't know that it's enough to stress him out to do, like I said, he's on that spectrum of he doesn't really have an interest. But you know what I mean? You might have, successful parents that want their kids to be just as successful, if not more, or have like these expectations that they're going to do 10 times better than they did, and they just want to be average. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys think this is what like kids were going through in the 70s? Like this is why the whole 70s, free love and drugs and all that stuff, that movement happened, is that kids were rebelling against their parents?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Because the 60s, well, let's say the 50s. The 50s were very strict, society wise. There were, lanes that you had to stay in. And then the 60s started to loosen it up. And then by the time you hit the 70s, it was like, yeah, we're not acting like our parents, we're not acting like them. And I think that this new our generation of parents, I'll say it that way. I think that our generation of parents is feeling a little of that too. Breaking out of what their parents did in the 80s, and I guess now 90s, but just not wanting to do parents not wanting to do rather what their parents did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I guess for me, and I might be a little ignorant, but I feel like drugs really wasn't a big thing in the 60s and 50s. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like I felt like definitely the 80s, and I can see it in the the hippies in the 70s. But again, that was weed. You know what I mean? Like, and I watch a
it
lot
was
of movies.
LSD. It was it was weed and LSD mostly. Mushroom was big in the 70s as well.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. Like between what I'm saying is in the 60s and the 70s. I mean, the 60s and the 50s. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like I can see how strict especially for us, right? People of color. But in terms of like how drugs was, like maybe I just watched too much TV because they talk about I want to say it was like what Nicky Barnes and not Rayful, but Freeway, Rick Ross.
Okay.
California. And then Rayful, on the East Coast.
Right.
What was the drug lord in New York? What was his name?
Alpo? No, not Alpo.
Black guy.
I can't. Yeah, I can't.
I'm talking about our community.
I can't remember. I can't remember his name. What are you talking about though?
You had Bumpy Johnson. And you had he played American Gangster. What was his name?
Oh, Frank Lucas.
Frank White.
Frank Lucas.
Yeah. But I feel like that was, before the 50s. I mean, after the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, like I said, in the 50s and start to loosen up a little bit in the 60s, but everything was so strict, like you were saying. I mean, people, it was cookie cutter society.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it obviously drugs are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. They are unfortunately, a part of society. The need that people have to escape things, the need that people have to figure out a way to deal, to cope, to de-stress. Like these are all reasons that quote unquote drugs exist, right? And I guess the question here is not one of like say no to. We're not talking about say no to drugs. This is not a PSA saying say no to drugs, right? But what we are trying to figure out is like how to best approach those kind of conversations with our kids to give them the kind of the optimal life experience where they either are not functioning addicts, where they are not so reliant on a substance that they can't interact, they can't live their lives normal day to day without partaking in a substance, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess I always thought it was weird that people would wake up in the morning and feel like they need to smoke weed before they could even get their day started.
They call it wake and bake.
Wake and bake, right? Like
wake and bake.
Or people who, you know, before they go, they gotta have that. They always talk about that that liquid courage before they go to an event, right? Like all of those kind of things are things that I think we want to try to offer our kids alternatives to. So they don't end up in that place where they have to have those things in order to be productive citizens, right? Like, and so my next question to you all is about, like, what are some of the things that you are hoping, whether it be college, trade school, whatever, what are some of the things that you are hoping to talk to your kids about as it relates to their experience at the university level, or at the next level of their lives, whatever that next level is? It may not be college, but whatever that next level of their lives is, like, what are some of the things that you are hoping to impart into your kids related to that, and you know, how they should proceed?
Yeah. I think, you know, I lean on the fact that we have hit these things earlier in age, and that they will take that into their young adulthood. You know, my kids definitely are pushed to go to college. You know, we never hard pushed them, but we just made it as though that was the next step. Right. You know, after high school was college, and you know, and they adhere to that. Now, in terms of how they act, you know, we had that conversation with my oldest, who's in his second year of college now. You know, we did have that conversation that, you know, you'll be away from home, but know that we're still around, we're still watching. We, you know, I have heard my wife say, you know, you represent us out in the street, you know. So, you know, you know, God bless, I've been blessed with kids or children who really have stayed straight and narrow, for the most part, you know, from what I know. You know, when we hear feedback, you know, from other people, it's always stellar, you know. And so we hope we've done the best, but we just kind of let them, like I said, to answer the question, just kind of say, hey, you know, you're out in the world, or you're getting ready to go out in the world, but you still have to be true to yourself,
Right.
you know, be who you are, who you've been. You know, we do say that because they've been great kids. So, you know, just don't stop.
Anything to add to that, Donnell?
The only thing that I would probably say, you know, that I would add to that is, you know, whether it be college, grade school, trade school, you know,
or grade school.
or grade school. You know, I would probably just add, and this is to anyone, you know what I mean? Like, you know, life isn't always fair. And, you know, as you become an adult, you know what I mean? You should make adult good decisions. And, you know, whether that be, you know, finding your outlet to manage stress, you know, whether it be, you know, talking to a therapist every week, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you shouldn't, you know, go down the route of, you know, taking drugs to help you, you know, write a paper, you know, through the night, or, you know, you feel intense, and, you know, because your class is stressful. Like, you have to make good decisions. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the class is too intense, you know, maybe you're not ready for it. You know what I mean? Right. Try to see if you can transfer out of it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, call me. You know? But I mean, I think me saying that is not making the decision for him.
Yeah.
it's him making a decision to not make a bad decision.
Right. I love that. I think that's an important piece that is oftentimes not talked about, right? I think that we forget sometimes to not just talk to our kids about not making bad decisions, but about thinking about how they can make a different decision, right? And that's an important piece to it, because sometimes it's very easy to feel like your back is against the wall and there's no way to get out of it. You gotta, lie, cheat, steal your way out of it, smoke your way out of it, drink your way out of it, whatever. But the reality of it is that there is nothing that happens in this world that you can't come back from, right? Except death.
I would agree.
Right? You die, that's it. Ain't no coming back from that. But anything else, you can come back from it, and you just have to be willing to work through that, to think about the other options that exist. And I think that's an important conversation that we have to have with our kids. Is like, what other options exist for what you're dealing with right now, for the experience that you're having, the situation you're feeling, whatever that is right now. Like, what other options exist for that? And that's something that I'm always working through with my kids. It's not that, and they're young, but it's not like, no, you can't. It's not that you can't cry. Okay, you can cry, but what do you do next? Right? Like, crying is a natural thing. Like, that is a natural emotion. Being angry, a natural emotion. Being upset, being, confused, all natural things. But what do you do next with that? Like, do you give up, or do you figure out a way to work through it? And so those are the kind of conversations we have to have.
So I was just thinking, and somebody, I can't remember if it was you or Donnell, I think it was Donnell that said something about coping with stress. When that was said, I immediately thought to myself, I need to ask my kids that, how do you cope with stress? Because I know they're dealing with it,
Right.
And I'd like to know that and have that conversation, because I think that is a gateway.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Well, to say that's just one of those things where, you know what I'm saying, like, I don't, no offense, you know what I mean, but no digs on you, but it's just one of those things where, kind of like being able to know your kids, because I personally feel like, when my son is stressed, he will shy away from conversation. He'll shut down from me, per se. You know what I mean? Because he feels like I'm giving him way too much, But again, you know what I mean? Like, have to constantly have that conversation with them. You know what I mean? Like, look, this is what life is going to give you. Sometimes it's going to give you lemons.
Yeah.
I figure out a way to make lemonade.
Make lemonade. Sell that junk. Yeah. Something, like figure, it's that figuring out piece. And that's, I look at my sons and I say to myself often that they are little people who I am trying to teach to be productive people. And for better or for worse, I don't necessarily have all the answers on how to do it the right way, but I know that if we can figure it out, my wife and I and the boys, if we can figure it out, that they can be productive, then they can be happy, and they don't have to feel like they have lost it all, or that they don't have what they need in order to continue along in their lives. And it's not easy. We know parenting is not easy. You guys been doing it longer than I have. You know what I'm saying? In all kinds of different environments and situations. But what we do have is our experiences, and we try to use those experiences as guide rails for our kids. So
I was gonna say, I think the best advice that I can give is, as long as your kids are communicating how they feel,
Mm.
you know what I mean? I don't know, or I don't think that there's nothing that they wouldn't share with you in terms of, what they may be going through. And, that gives you that opportunity to give them like nuggets on how to navigate life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree, Donnell. And I think that, knowing that one of your sons is even considering whether he has or hasn't, even considering using drugs. I know you mentioned that before, like that's a win. You know what I'm saying?
I would agree with that. I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, I think for some people, so I looked at it as, well, I'm not going to say, she didn't look at it as a teachable moment. You know what I mean? Like, I looked at it as, all right, he's curious. You know what I mean? Like, he may see, other guys or even other women. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like, when you have something in common with a young lady, I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's just a bonding moment. You know what I mean? Not saying that it's good, but you know what I mean? Like, that's how you get your foot in the door if you were interested or whatever the case may be.
Right.
You don't want no girl that's a weed head. Don't do it.
But you don't. But at 13, or you're not thinking about.
Right.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? You thinking about. Well, I don't know what he's thinking about. I mean,
Ooh, that's another show.
We know what he's thinking about. That's right. That is another show.
But yeah, I don't know. I say, the situation was relatable. You know what I mean? Having that conversation, I was able to give him my nuggets, you know what I mean? And, would he learn from it? I don't know. Like, we haven't had any issues since.
Right.
But, I don't know. I guess in my situation, or in this situation, like, I felt like the environment itself triggered, you know what I mean, like his curiosity, because I don't have to deal with that in the suburbs of Maryland.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an important distinction. And this has been really good. I really enjoyed this. I love this kind of conversation. And it's weird. It's hard to have these kind of conversations because these are like more serious conversations. I like to like have light conversations as well. But every once in a while, I gotta have a serious conversation. And I'm not, I think I said this before. We are not telling people to use drugs. We are not telling people not to use drugs. That's decisions that people have to make. But what this is an opportunity to talk about and listen to us talk about experiences that we've had and things that we've seen and wondered about. And that's a really important piece, I think, to understanding that every child is an individual, right? And if we can have them feel comfortable enough to have a conversation with us about what they are experiencing, because we know that they're experiencing it, whether it be pills, whether it be vaping, whether it be, I guess people still smoke cigarettes. Do people still do that?
Yeah, they do.
Drinking. All of those things are things that ultimately have consequences, right? And if we can, as parents, put ourselves in a position to be a sounding board for our kids, that they can come and talk to us about whatever they're experiencing without repercussions, right? Like, this is a conversation, and important to say, it's without repercussions, right? My family just started family counseling recently. And one of the first things that I said in that family counseling session was, I told my sons, specifically my oldest son, that the things that you say in this session are without repercussion, right? Like, this is an opportunity, and that's important to say in all conversation I think we have with our kids, that where we think they might be concerned about what might come back from us, or what might be the backlash from us in the situation, right? They interested in sex, they interested in stealing. I don't know, like whatever things might like. Look, let's talk about it before you go out and do any of these things. Let's talk about it, right? And what is that, and being able to talk about it in a safe space without repercussions, right? So
yeah.
So cool. Well, hey, before we go, because I really appreciate this conversation. You guys have been great new additions to the Daddy Confessions family. I appreciate you guys for being here. Do you guys have any nuggets of information or any last things that you would like to share with the parents out there who may be listening, or soon to be parents, or maybe never want to be parents because they listen to the podcast? People who are listening to the podcast, anything you want to share with them? Any nuggets of information?
I'll say be there.
Mm.
Be there for them. Be there with them. Be there sometimes in spite of them. Just be there.
Yeah.
Because that, from what I've learned, that is one of the biggest things that they take out of life, is who is in their life.
Mm.
Yeah.
I would probably say be human, have realistic expectations. Not saying that you have to be their friend, but I think that we all experience something, experimented at something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It may help, that it could be relatable to the situation that you may be going through. Have grace, but with that, just like Mike said, be there, be supportive. You know what I mean? Because it matters.
Yeah. Thank you guys. That was great. I appreciate that. I receive it myself. I think those are great kind of parting words to the listeners. I hope they got something out of this, because I got something out of it. And again, I appreciate you guys for being here. This has been a conversation that has been rolling around in my mind for a while. And just to throw it out there, recently the show, I guess what is it called? The Best Man final chapter came out.
Mm-hmm.
And episode 6, I think it was, where it was New Year's. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Mike. I know Donnell.
I haven't seen 6 yet. I'm on 5.
Okay. This. Think about this conversation when you watch that episode. If you guys, if anybody's not seen that episode, think about this conversation, and then the end of that episode. it kind of all comes together, and I don't know I haven't seen episode 7 yet, so don't tell me, Donnell. But I don't know. I don't know if they get back to it or not. But this is definitely part of that conversation, or the conversation that we had is part of what happens in that episode. Okay. And it's interesting. Just trying to think through like how we engage with our kids. Like, at what point do we have to be an adult when we rather not? You know what I'm saying? Like all of those things are part of that, right? And we always have to remember that we are the parents. We made this decision, sometimes on our own, sometimes with the help of another person. But we did this. The kids are here. We gotta work through it with them. You know what I'm saying? So
that's right. That's right.
Well, thank you guys again. Really appreciate it. All you all listening.
Thank you.
Out there in podcast land. Thank you for listening to another episode of Daddy Confessions. Check us out. We come back in a couple weeks. I don't even know what the date is. For the Millionaire Man Cave, another season. I'm the new addition to that podcast. I guess they like me, okay, because they let me come back for another season.
You all right.
I try. I do what I can. But I appreciate you guys for listening. Check us out on the Millionaire Man Cave on RE-T. Man, he ain't even pay me for this ad. RE-TV.net. All right. Check us out there as well. Check us out on YouTube as well. Check out the rest of this podcast. We are in season 4. I think this is season 4 for Daddy Confessions. So I appreciate you guys for being here, for listening. Thank you. Peace.
Peace.